Yeah, now stand and cheer for your Detroit Bad Boys.
Hello, welcome to another edition of the Talking Basketball Podcast. I am Mark.
I am Paul, and this is a great one, Mark.
This is a great one. We're doing something a little bit different today, aren't we?
Yeah, well, you said there was a lot of interest in like the NBA Cup one we did.
Yes, sir.
And then you had a few emails saying talk about, you know, some of the great teams. And that's when we had the idea of there's a lot of young guys that I talk to who don't know about the Bad Boys.
No.
The Detroit Bad Boys.
It's as good a place to start as anyway for modern basketball, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is great because, look, the Bad Boys, for those who don't know, Detroit Pistons, the late 80s, early 90s, and they were the ones that were willing to do anything to win. And that is that characteristic was what made people love them. It's also what made people hate them. And it earned them the title, the Bad Boys. So let's start there. It's great. And you know what I love about the Bad Boys is it doesn't follow that NBA trend. So you had Magic and Bird, the Lakers dynasty, the Celtics dynasty, Michael Jordan's dynasty coming in. But for 2 shining years, you had the Detroit Pistons upsetting everything, becoming back-to-back NBA champions. And it wasn't part of the script. And that's what's so good about that. That's what's so good about the story.
They've had a very interesting time because they're quite storied as a team. And I think, well, it sounds silly, but certainly for me, obviously for you as well, but our memory of Detroit also is the fact that your brother supported them. So being younger, you'd see the posters on his wall.
Well, they were world champions. You would. So, yeah, I mean, I guess where can we start? I mean, people will know the Detroit Pistons, these Bad Boys, you know, Isaiah Thomas, you've just said, Bill Laimbeer. Some of the names people don't associate, which I think is crazy, is people like Dennis Rodman, John Spider Sally, Joe Dumars, Rick Mahorn. So, yeah, let's go on with that story, Mark. So I think we need to start it off with the legend, the one and only Jack McCloskey.
Well done, Jack.
So Jack McCloskey, he is the one, if you've seen the infamous, in The Last Dance, you've seen the infamous Game 7 against the Jordans, against Jordan and the Bulls, and you see the Pistons walk off the court. Now, in particular, the bit you always see on TV is Laimbeer and Isaiah behind him. They're getting near the change room, and there's a guy standing there who's clearly upset and looking very proud of them, and he cuddles them. That is Jack McCloskey, and he was GM of Detroit Pistons.
Yep.
And he was the one, they called him Trader Jack. He was the one who created everything. And that's why he's so pivotal to the start of this story.
I love that nickname.
What, Trader Jack?
Trader Jack.
So I've actually met him as well.
The Harry Redknapp.
I think you might have met him as well.
Really? Oh, was he there with John Sally?
Yeah, so a long time ago, it was Dennis Rodman and John Sally were coming to Portsmouth, who were, I think, probably the champions at that time. That's why they were coming down. And they were doing this whole, like, show, I guess. Now, Dennis Rodman didn't turn up because he...
Met a lady.
Yeah, well, that's what Mick said, yeah, but back in the day. So it was just John Sally, but he did put a show on for all the kids. Now, the one thing I remember was talking to Jack McCloskey as a young kid, thinking, what a really nice guy. And to the point I remember him now still thinking, what a nice guy he was.
Wow.
In particular, and, you know, I'm going to have a go at Mountbatten staff here. So I'm there. There's a few kids here. We've got John Sally, NBA legend, standing there.
And champion at that point.
And world champion. And
world champion.
And we're all waiting for change from the lady at the Mountbatten Centre, like front till so we can have our photo taken in a booth with John Sally.
Oh, no.
And she's just taking her time. No, wait for it. Anyway, John Sally went, I'm really sorry, guys. I got to shoot off. And we were all like, oh. Jack McCloskey stayed and waited patiently for the lady. It was quite a while from what I remember. Anyway, he then came in the booth with the kids. You know that like strip of photos?
Yeah.
I had that with Jack McCloskey. That was on my freaking wall for like
I remember
10 years afterwards. Anyway, so really nice guy. And he passed away. I want to say, where did I wrote? He passed away 2019, aged 91.
That's a good innings. Good innings.
Yeah. But he was GM for the Pistons in 1979 to 1992. So I think
79 year the Seattle Supersonics won, just saying.
Wow. So he, I think we probably met him 90. It'd have been 89 or 90. We would have met him. But he is also added to the honorees list in 2008 in Detroit. So he's got, I don't think it's a number. I think it's like a kit with his name on it, and it's like that's raised. So yeah,
They'd only do that for a very specific.
Yeah, there's not many. I think there's like 2 or 3 in Detroit, and he's one of them.
Oh, that's awesome.
So he became GM of the Detroit Pistons, and over that 13-year period, Trader Jack, as he was known, made huge trades, absolute huge trades that was just constantly upgrading the team to become that challenger to take on the Boston Celtics, take on the Los Angeles Lakers. And when we talk about these teams, we're talking about the 1986 Boston Celtics, arguably one of the greatest teams ever assembled. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about...
Yeah, you should talk on Showtime Lakers as well.
Exactly, I was about to say Showtime Lakers. Arguably one of the greatest teams ever assembled.
I would say the best Lakers dynasty, but I think Kobe may have taken that one now as like the best.
Well, you're talking about 2 dynasties here.
Huge.
One in the East, one in the West, and Detroit are trying to, do well. Okay, so that's where this story starts. And
Celtics versus Lakers, great basketball game.
Yeah. Well, what?
It was a basketball game, wasn't it? Was it Bulls versus Lakers or Celtics versus Lakers?
No, I think it was Celtics Lakers, and then when Jordan started becoming popular, Jordan versus Lakers or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it probably tied up when whoever was in the final, I'd imagine. That was an old Mega Drive game or something.
I think that was Mega Drive around the NBA Jam times.
So right now, any of the young guys listen to this who don't know who we're talking about, please look it up. Please go on YouTube, type the Bad Boys, type these players, because it's definitely worth a watch. So Mark, you got to start. Let's start in 1981. The man who started the entire thing, that little chain, Jack McCloskey. He has the number 2 pick.
Yep.
And he gets Zeke.
Who's number 1 that year?
Number 1, I believe, was Mark Aguirre. I think it was.
Oh yeah, bullet dodge there.
So, well,
sorry, Mark.
Well, you say that, but his name gets brought up later in the story.
I know.
So, number 1 pick was Mark Aguirre, and do you know at the start, before they actually announce all the trades, they do like their, I don't know what they call it, where they show all their skills and stuff like that, and they have the interviews. I didn't realize they have interviews. Anyway, Jack McCloskey interviews Isaiah Thomas. And in those days, no one wanted to go to Detroit. They're like, I'll go in, serve my time, and I'm out.
Yeah.
And Isaiah Thomas, I heard him in an interview. He goes, literally every question Jack McCloskey asked me, he goes, I'm just messing this up. Like, he goes, I'm giving him all the wrong answers. And at the end of the interview, Jack McCloskey turns around to him and says, I don't care what you said to me. If you're available, number 2, I'm picking you. And Isaiah's like, well, okay. So anyway, Isaiah gets picked up by the Pistons. And then he immediately shows his ability, and if you've not seen any of his videos, he's just got. I'm just trying to a good way of explaining. It's just he's
Fluid.
his passion as well.
Yeah.
His heart is on his sleeve. You know, he's a fighter. He is a freaking lion,
Gritty.
ready to go.
He's gritty.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, everyone looks at that smile, but I mean, he is just like, you know, absolute warrior.
Yeah, you look
Absolute
at a
warrior.
snake's face. A snake looks like it's smiling as well. It's the same thing. Ain't going down without a fight.
So he gets this guard, and then the other one you got to talk about in the same year, I think it was towards the end of the year, he picks up Vinnie Johnson in a trade with your favorite team,
Yes.
Seattle Supersonics, who had just won the title.
Oh, yeah.
They get Vinnie Johnson, I think, wasn't it Microwave? The Microwave,
Yeah.
I think that was his nickname.
Yep.
And then again, I think it was, I'm just seeing in my notes, I think it was a few years later. No, sorry, a year later. Early 82. Jack McCloskey is away watching Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, because Zeke was at 81 draft, wasn't he?
Yeah, so within that same season, I believe, Jack McCloskey's watching Cleveland, and there's this guy called Bill Laimbeer. And what he says about Bill Laimbeer is Cleveland were losing by 20 points, and he is fighting ferociously still to win the game, and the game's over. And it's like, hang on, this guy, and he was like, I need to get this guy. And he actually put some, I want to say some significant trades in to get Laimbeer.
Oh, he did well then.
So at the heart of this, Laimbeer and Isaiah Thomas are from Chicago. Yeah, I think Isaiah Thomas clearly had a harder time in his upbringing,
Yeah.
and Bill Laimbeer had it quite easy.
Yes.
And but they were from Chicago, so they got on with each other. They started doing well, and then
Must have been weird for them playing for Detroit, actually. Because Detroit and Chicago are not a million miles away.
no, and they're huge rivals.
Yeah.
Huge rivals. And you know the thing with Isaiah Thomas, like Chicago was his hometown. When he was going back playing Chicago, he was being applauded. He was the young star of Chicago, and a man who came into the league very soon took that from him, and that is part of it. And a bit of the stuff that come up in the Last Dance, which I didn't like, they didn't bring up. They didn't talk about the fact that Isaiah loved Chicago. He loved that support he got from them. He was from Chicago. Michael Jordan turns up. This is the Jordan show now.
It's
And now
like-
they hate him.
It's like the
Now they hate Isaiah.
yeah, but it's the worst version of jealousy, isn't it? Because you go, Isaiah was talented, Jordan was just a little more talented and a little more athletic, and then was not even in his hometown, and then took his hometown away from him. And it's like,
Yeah.
are you kidding me?
But that is such a valuable piece of information that
yeah.
didn't get brought up in the Last Dance.
I didn't know Laimbeer was Chicago. I knew Zeke was, but
He was in a very nice. His dad was like a president of some company,
oh, okay.
and in his first couple of years in the NBA, his dad was earning more money than he was in the NBA. But I guess you're still in the days where the NBA hasn't exploded with the financials yet.
No. Well, actually, you say that. I was looking at something with the Lakers actually the other day, and you see David Stern giving Magic Johnson his MVP, and it looks like just like a little office, and they're all like sitting around for a little press conference, and he says, "Oh, this is the MVP award sponsored by Edge," and he actually says like a little sponsored by Edge, and then goes to hand the trophy over and knocks it over, and
Oh, no.
that's the one where Magic Johnson goes, well, I guess that's why he runs the league and isn't a basketball player. And you're like, because he dropped it, you're like,
Oh, I haven't seen that. I have to look
oh,
that
it's
up.
brilliant, mate. But, that was, you think, the reason I think that's quite important is that certainly in this conversation with the bad boys, you've got to think that the Lakers and Celtics, that whole massive rivalry was well oiled at that point. The Lakers had won a few, and Boston were trying to chip away at that. And then that's the point where Zeke's coming into this and building up. So you go, that's the sort of the ocean that they're swimming in.
Yeah.
It's like you've got two massive teams who are going head to head.
Two juggernauts.
Yeah.
Absolute juggernauts.
And it's not even just that they've got, obviously, the Lakers, Minneapolis Lakers, if you want to be correct. But just the Lakers and the Celtics, not only do they got that huge histories, but their fan bases are lunatics. So,
yeah.
And then they had Magic and Bird, who clearly had an interesting rivalry.
Yeah.
So all of that was going on, all the way through that early to mid 80s.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the
79, they both came into the league at the same time.
Lakers won it in 87, 88.
Lakers got it 80,
So
82,
they
85,
still,
87,
they still
88.
dominate the 80s. Those two teams dominate.
Lakers had 5 championships in the 80s, 80, 82, 85, 87,
Yeah.
88.
Well,
And Celtics was 76, 81, 84, 86.
well, I think the next key to this puzzle comes in 1983 when Chuck Daly
Yeah.
becomes head coach of the Detroit Pistons. Now, if you don't know who Chuck Daly is, I'm surprised.
Look up a picture of a used car salesman and it will look like that.
Well, I'd be shocked if you don't know who the Dream Team are.
Yeah.
So the Dream Team, I believe that was 92. He was the head coach for the Dream Team. He's also Hall of Famer, Coach Hall of Famer. So he came into the Pistons team and, initially the Pistons had difficulty moving up that NBA ladder. And then I think when you get to, I think it was 1985 playoffs. That's the first time Detroit, they won their first round series.
Yeah.
And then they go to take on the Boston Celtics, who are defending champions. So they're now in the realms of we're playing just to get to the final, arguably one of the greatest teams assembled. Okay?
Yep.
So Boston won in 6 games in that season. However, the performance Detroit put on in that series, they put everyone on notice in the NBA, we're coming. It was like, whoa, okay, they've just taken the Celtics to a six games here. And they...
Who are they? That was the thing, wasn't it? It was like, who are they?
Yeah.
They've just taken them to 6 games. Like, what?
Yeah. So I can't remember what happened. There was something really significant in that series, which was like, wow, okay.
I know in the
Here we go.
I know in the 87 series it was the that was the steal, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're jumping ahead, Mark. You're jumping ahead.
Jumping ahead.
Right, before you get there. So, Boston, they've just been beaten by Boston, okay? And now, the 1985 NBA draft, the Detroit Pistons. And again, this all goes back to Jack McCloskey doing his negotiating. I think I wrote it down here, actually, because this was a really important one. So he gets Joe Dumars, okay? Best known moves, Joe outside the lottery. So he gets Joe Dumars. And just to put this in context for people who Joe Dumars is, Michael Jordan has said, and I'm quoting, Dumars was the best defender I've ever faced.
Yeah.
That's Michael Jordan saying that about Joe Dumars.
Reasonable praise, isn't it?
Yeah. So, right. Anyway, so he managed, they get Joe Dumars 18th overall, and it later proved to be really wise. And now Joe Dumars has just gone through his college years.
Yep.
With posters of Isaiah Thomas on his wall. So now he turns up and was like, wow, I'm running alongside like Isaiah Thomas. And he turns into like the best sidekick for Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, they were great. Absolutely.
The other one is huge trade here was Rick Mahorn. So Rick Mahorn got traded from the Washington Bullets in those days.
Yes.
Now, Rick Mahorn is a character. So if you seen in those 80s those really physical plays where someone stands and puts a pick on around the halfway line and someone runs into it and they get taken out, yeah? That's Rick Mahorn.
That's my kind of player.
That's Rick Mahorn.
Take the head off. Clean cut.
So, yeah, they managed to get him, and he hated Detroit so much. He hated Isaiah. He hated Detroit. He was like, I do not want to be here. So he got traded in the summer, and he just went, oh, screw this. I am just putting on weight over the summer. He turned up to training, and you've got, I heard it in an interview with Bill Laimbeer. Bill Laimbeer walks up to him and says, this is unacceptable. This is what we expect from you. This is what's going to happen. And if you don't like it, we're going to fight. That's what you were getting in the Detroit Pistons in those days. So I think it took a while for Rick Mahorn to gel in the team, but he becomes like best buddies with Bill Laimbeer.
Yeah.
And they have this thing later on called tap tap. I don't know if you ever heard this. I heard Rick Mahorn say it once. He said tap tap. And if one of them says tap tap, it means whoever's coming in, you don't know who's coming for you, but one of them is putting you on the floor.
Oh.
So tap tap, like boom.
Ouch.
Which Jordan found out.
Yeah,
in the late 80s. So
if you see a picture of Bill Laimbeer back then and you looked at a picture of him, you'd think, doesn't look that scary.
no.
If anyone who hasn't watched him play, watch him just play. Just a few highlights. You think he was savage.
Yeah. And you know what? The one thing Bill Laimbeer doesn't get credit for is he is playing a mental game on another level. If you just watch him, and he would be like, when he talks about Celtics, he's just like, I'm playing the mental game with Bird, cut the head off the snake and the snake's dead.
Yep.
So he's focused on Bird.
I mean, Larry was pretty much as good as it gets for mental games, wasn't it? Like, I'm going to walk the ball down there, and I'm going to shoot that shot, and I'm going to do exactly this. You do it on the person, and they're like, well, I can't stop him.
I could be wrong here.
Yes.
No, I am wrong here. It's in the next season coming up.
Okay.
There was something that happens with Laimbeer, with Larry. No, I'm very sure.
Because he was one of the first people that I noticed as well wearing the goggles. A different style of goggle, not just the ones like Kareem was wearing. He was wearing slightly different ones. I noticed that.
Laimbeer?
Yeah. He put them on a few times.
He had. Also, I'm sure he wore like the more modern mask.
Yeah.
I think that was quite early in that
Yes.
time. So anyway, next season it's the
87 season.
So we're now in the 86 playoffs. Okay. And even though they're making this advancement with their team, they lose in the first round to Atlanta Hawks. And it's at that point they go, right, they changed the I guess the mentality of the team to be more defensive minded. Okay. So we then go into the 86-87 season, and again, Jack McCloskey. He gets two players who are arguably one of the best players he gets. And that's John Sally, John Spider Sally, drafted 11th overall, and Dennis Rodman,
One of my favorites.
drafted 27th.
Yep.
Now, imagine that. He's just got Dennis Rodman, 27th pick.
Yep.
One of the greatest rebounders of all time. 27th
I'm going to
pick.
say defensive players, not even just rebounders, because he was even in those days, it was like a dog. Just go get the ball. And it was just like, fetch. Go, off you go. That ball's mine. The ball's going up. If it's offensive or defensive. If the ball's going out of bounds, those are the days where people were running and doing a dive and landing in the crowd and stuff, weren't they? And the amount of pictures you get with Rodman.
Dennis Rodman, wasn't it?
Yeah, just taking people out. That's, he just went for it. Which teams in so nicely with people like Zeke, who they threw their body into it, and Laimbeer, they all just put their body on it, weren't they? That's one of their...
And I'm glad you mentioned his defensive ability, because a lot of people say rebounds, which is definitely true, but his defensive presence. He won Defensive Player of the Year. That's how good he was.
He's 6'10". He's massive.
Also, I'm fairly confident when they're playing the Lakers and trying to beat the Lakers in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Sorry, in the finals, you got Rodman on Magic.
Yeah, he's going nowhere.
You're putting a big guy on arguably one of the greatest point guards of all time.
Oh yeah, Magic, yeah, 100%.
So,
but when you look at
I always say arguably because you've got way out.
Yeah. Well, when you go to that era as well, one of the things you've got to consider is you look at the actual shape of the players, because the athleticism and the physical nature of the game, that was quite a turning point in the NBA itself. So that's something that was quite highlighted by the bad boys. Some of the players were quite ripped, and they were getting quite big and quite ripped. Up until then, like late 70s to early 80s, you weren't getting big. That was that sort of athletic turning point. You know, with Dr. J doing the dunks, all of that started coming across. The athleticism in basketball was coming. So that became quite prevalent, because when you see someone like Rodman, who was a big dude, when you see him at Detroit, he was quite lean.
Yeah.
He was quite a lean guy. Lanebeer wasn't big and stacked. He was quite a lean guy as well. But they just knew how to use their bodies.
Yeah, well, they turned the team into a, teams were getting ready for a fight when they played Detroit Pistons.
Yes.
And I think it was Joe Dumars who said he would read the newspaper.
Yes.
Going into whoever they were playing, and he'd be reading the other team going in the newspaper saying, "We're ready to fight them," and he'd be like, "The game's over. We've already won. They're just thinking of fighting us. We're getting ready to play a game of basketball."
Yeah.
So anyway, we're heading into the 86-87 season. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. There's one player they got again in a trade. Huge player was Adrian Dantley.
Okay.
He got from the Utah Jazz, and he was an amazing scorer, absolutely amazing scorer. And again, the team now have adopted this very, very physical, defensive-oriented style of play. Obviously, where they got the nickname the Bad Boys.
Yep.
So now we're getting into the exciting years. So in 1987, the Detroit Pistons reached the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. And this is the bit you were talking about. Right. I'm now going to go back.
Yep.
Okay. So you got the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. And this is the defending champions now. So we're now at a point where we are saying arguably one of the greatest teams of all time. Yeah, arguably.
They've won it at that point,
I think 3 times.
Yes, that was their third and last time in the 80s. 81, 84 and 86 for the Celtics.
And this is what you were talking about. So just to bring the mentality of the Detroit Pistons to the forefront of this conversation, at this point, they want the Celtics. They want to beat the Celtics. They're trying to beat the Celtics. They've been doing it year after year after year, and they can't get past that hurdle. Okay? And there's a great move.
And that's always in the Eastern Conference Finals and stuff.
Yes,
isn't it?
This is Eastern Conference. So there's a great move. This is in the Boston Garden. I don't know how much time was left, but Isaiah's got the ball. He goes around, I think, the top of the key, hits a shot. Detroit go up by 1. Okay? And Celtics come down the other end. Sorry, no, there's a timeout. Celtics get the ball, inbound the ball, and the defense that Detroit are playing is just amazing. Just watch it. It is amazing defense. And the ball goes out of play and comes off a Celtic.
Yep.
And so the referee is like, Detroit basketball. Detroit are in the Garden. They're up by 1. 2 seconds left on the clock. And they're like, we got them. We bloody got them. We've done it. And This is what you're I mean, do you want to carry on with this bit now?
I just want to know what your opinion is. Was it Larry's genius or was it Zeke's mistake?
Let me just say what happened then for those who don't know this incident. So Isaiah Thomas, this is on the sideline in the backcourt. So he's in his backcourt. The referee holds out the ball. Isaiah run round, grabs it. I think he sees Lane Beer free underneath the basket. And he goes to pass the Lane Beer. Larry Bird comes from nowhere, steals the ball, passes it off to, who's the other guard? Passes it off to another Celtic who gets a layup. And then there's a second left in the game. And that's it. Game's gone.
Yeah, that is.
Now, what are you going to say? Because this is you got a point on this, haven't you?
Well, it was more that, people say that Chuck Daly actually was calling a timeout and that Isaiah missed when it was the thing that Chuck was actually calling a timeout, and apparently Isaiah missed it. That's one of the rumors that goes around, and because he missed Chuck was shouting for a timeout. I just don't know how that would work, or play it down, or whatever it was, because the ball was outbound and they had 2 seconds left. So you go, what was he going to do for that?
Yeah, they did have one timeout.
And this is one of these things which is great about the game, where you see all these rumor mills. Did he miss Chuck's timing out? Did he make the right play? Was it simply that Larry was like a savant? And you got to think, this is Larry Bird. We're not just talking about a random player. Larry was a savant, and he did get it physical and get the ball, and he read things. So he had that ability, and it was almost like everything went in place.
Larry was one of the baddest dudes in the freaking league.
But I think that one, 100%, that was on Zeke. That was 100% his mistake in that one. He just made the wrong play. That's all it was. He just made the wrong play.
The only thing I've seen from that, I haven't heard Chuck Daly's version.
Yeah.
Other than him saying, I would have liked to time out. That's all I've ever heard him say.
And that's what they've always said.
But
he was calling the timeout.
The ref holds the ball, and Isaiah runs, grabs it.
And that's it, yeah.
And then the rest is history.
So that was purely, I think Zeke was so excited in the garden, had all the passion. It was there. Let's seal it. And mate just didn't listen.
Oh, wow. I've just got a note here.
I love the fact you've just surprised yourself.
Chuck Daly's timeout signal from the bench was missed.
Oh, it's almost like I did my homework.
No, but so,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Is that a table officials? Is
saying,
that the Garden's
apparently
home
he was
court
signaling
advantage?
it, and Isaiah should have been signaling it to them, saying he's calling a timeout.
Yeah, that's game. That's game.
But Isaiah did not see it because he just was so excited. Bang, off he went. And it's all on him.
I think the classic camera angle of that is you're looking at again Celtic legend Bill Walton.
Yes.
Where he's on the bench, just like hands up in his hair, just like, oh shoot,
yeah,
they've got us. And then 2 seconds later, he's laughing like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Dennis Johnson, that was the guy. He passes it to Dennis Johnson, who gets the layup.
Yes.
Celtic legend. And then the Pistons that was game 5. Pistons did win game 6 back in Detroit.
Yep.
But they lost the series in a tough game 7 back in Boston.
Oh, yeah.
So they had that shot. Going in the Garden in those days is hard, and they, I think that they were just. I think just game 5 was their shot, and they missed it.
I had a little piece of the Garden. I had a little bit of wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was on.
I know people who have. Where is it?
Lost it. Yeah. As annoying as that.
Don't tell me it was signed.
No, it was one of those bits where they here's the little bit of the parquet, and it was on one of those Topps cards, thingy, whatever, with the hologram.
Jeez, that'd be nice.
Yeah, that was quite annoying, and I used to keep it in my sun visor of my car.
Why?
Because it was cool.
Jeez.
Right. And then when I destroyed the car because it blew up, I totally forgot about that. And then after it was a little while after, I was like, oh, so yeah, that's lost forever.
Yeah. So some
No,
idiot.
it's gone. Crushed. Bomb.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Jeez. Wow.
Oh well, so there's a
There you
bit
go,
of the
folks. If you
there's a
ever
bit of
get
the garden that's gone
a
back,
bit of parquet floor, don't leave it in your car.
as you do.
Anyway, so this is
Can I just say, the Pistons kit, by the way, I know I'm all about the aesthetic, but the Detroit Pistons kit is so much nicer looking than the Celtics.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
in that era as well. Even when you look back at it and you look at all the old kits, and some of them don't hold up very well. That Detroit kit looks superb still.
Well, I would say the white Detroit kit in like in what year are we going to say? I'd say in 80, 81, 82, 83. The white kit, I don't know if it was when the players sweat, it just went all see-throughy, shiny, like it just looked odd. It just went, it almost like lost its whiteness. Just it goes like a.
I want to say it was the Team USA kit, but it might have been one of the East or West kits when they did an All-Star, and they did something similar once, and it did the same thing. It was like
when they got sweaty, it just
doesn't. It looks weird. Yeah.
But yeah, by the time you get to after 84, I think 85, Detroit's kit, sweet ass.
Yes.
Nice. Right.
Except 2006 when they went teal, but we won't talk about that.
So this is the controversial thing that happens.
Yeah.
So look, you've got a rookie in Dennis Rodman, and a press. And look, we're all big boys. We can talk about this now. This is history. Someone from the press is talking to him. Now, the one thing that doesn't get talked about here is you've just lost the conference finals, and you've got press people sticking microphones and cameras in your face.
And they're in the locker room as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's like they're like, I would be just get out.
But I'd be fuming, and there's got all this in your face. Anyway, so
you'd be absolutely impossible if you'd lost in that final.
And so what happens is someone asks Dennis Rodman about Larry, you know, and Larry Bird is easily one of the best players in the league at this time. You know?
Yeah.
And
already been on the team that's won it 3 times.
He has just schooled Dennis Rodman trying to mark him. Yeah. Okay? Or they took turns in. Anyway, so Dennis Rodman makes the comment of Larry Bird's a good player, but if he was black, he would just be a regular dude.
Yep.
Huge comment at the time. Now, where I feel sorry for Isaiah is someone from the press goes up to Isaiah and says, your teammate has just made this comment, plays it to him. What do you think? And his quote, where you hear, I'd have to agree with Rodman. If he was black, he would just be another good guy. And that erupted, absolutely erupted. You can argue, to be fair to Dennis Rodman and Isaiah, you could argue their point, not on Larry. You can argue the point they're trying to make.
Yep.
But they picked the wrong guy to make it on.
Yeah,
Larry
unfortunately, Bird. he was king of the castle at that point. He was beloved by a lot, even people who weren't Celtics fans liked Larry because he was that player that you love to hate, or whichever way. He was just talented, exciting to watch, etc., etc. You had to respect him if nothing else. But I think with that quote, it was controversial.
It is extremely controversial in this time.
And it is a shame that people took Isaiah and were like, "You made the comment." He didn't make a comment. He made a comment based on, or he had an opinion based on someone else's comment. Nowadays, I mean, that's a Twitter feed, isn't it? I mean, you put anything out there nowadays, you get 50 million.
If he made it now in our culture,
you'd be cancelled by all the vegans.
He'd be in prison.
All the vegans would be lined up. Yeah,
but this is and this was where I guess it went very sour for Isaiah.
Yeah,
because he took the brunt of that, and everything that I've heard about Isaiah was. And you even listen to him talk on certain things. He's always supportive of his teammates. So when they talk about, obviously, the last dance, when they talk about whose idea it was to walk out, it was Lane Beers, but Isaiah doesn't say that.
No.
He just says, I'm not sure. He knows exactly. He could say it was Lane Beers and I just followed, but he doesn't. He's supporting his teammates. And in this case, he's supporting Dennis Rodman. And
Dennis, for those who don't know, if you haven't, go look at a thing about Dennis. I don't know if I think they did a 30-30 on him, but there's certainly loads and loads of clips and highlights and things about Dennis's history. He didn't have the best life.
He had a terrible upbringing.
And his what's that approach, but a view of life and college and basketball like saved him, and he openly puts that.
Yeah.
But it's fair to say, I love Dennis. I've got various shirts of his, and he's amazing. But he definitely had some very interesting perspectives on life. So while someone might say, that was maybe an ignorant comment nowadays, him making that about Larry, you've got to think, who was it who said it? Now, if Isaiah had said it personally, you go, yeah, that's not good. But this was Dennis saying it, and you go,
he just agreed with his comment.
Yeah, but also it's like Dennis was coming from a different place where he was ignorant to stuff. So he was saying things.
He was a rookie at the time.
And yeah, he was a rookie, but he was ignorant with lots of things in life, and he's had lots of other problems going on. And you go, I think
Isaiah had been around, he should have known better.
Oh, should have known better than said anything like that. But it goes even further back than that. You've just lost a championship.
Yeah.
Why are you letting the press in there?
Yeah. And you know what? I always, people don't mention that. They've just lost game 7 and someone comes in and goes,
yeah,
bam,
but
in your face.
That's what sells the newspapers and the world it is now.
So, well, what happens after that is it turns into this huge thing. People calling Isaiah racist and all of that. And where I think personally the saddest moment of this is it's cringeworthy. It's cringeworthy. Before game 2, so the Lakers are in the finals, Celtics are in the finals, they've progressed. Yeah, that's the final. Before game 2,
yep.
In LA, they have a press conference with Isaiah and Larry to talk this out.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen
I
it,
have forgotten about that. That was
look it up. It's so cringeworthy. And if you listen to the full thing, it starts and you think, once you get used to the BS press talking, if you know what I mean, when you ask someone something and they go, yeah, well, you know what, it's brought a lot of people together, it shows how much you get that. And then sometimes you get those real answers. Now, this is
that the first woke moment in sport? Just thinking about it. Everyone get round the table, let's all hold hands, and everyone says we're sorry. Like nowadays, we are all used to that rubbish, aren't we? And everyone's being desensitized.
I don't know.
But that was a whole thing, wasn't it?
Oh, like if that. Well, I think there have been some recent examples actually. But anyway, yeah, it wasn't nowhere near as huge as this. So,
but that was one of the that's 80s we're talking about.
Yeah,
you got to remember, this isn't like 2015 or something. This is 1987. This is a long time ago when they're doing that publicly.
Yeah, and you know what? This just, I think this just fueled.
Yeah.
The Pistons Celtic rivalry even more.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Huge. So if you haven't seen the press interview, it's classic. And this is where I think Isaiah personally made a mistake. So it was probably the time where he could have said it was the wrong thing to say. I apologize. Everyone would have thought, oh, he's being the bigger man, done. He tries to dig himself out of a hole. And that's the problem. He starts talking and it becomes very, very uncomfortable in the interview. You listen to going, wow, this is cringe. But again, something that never gets brought up. Oh, sorry. In that interview, Larry walks off. I think Larry's like, you're man, I'd come in to help you out. And go, let's all forget about it. At some point, I can't hear what he says.
And Larry's going into a game.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. No one mentions this. This is before game 2, which the Celtics lose. And Lakers are now 2-0 up after this. And I just wonder, I wonder what the Celtics would have been like. Was this much of a distraction for them? Like, you got your best player in a press conference talking about comments from another team they've just beat.
I don't know. That was at the point where Larry's back started going, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. It made me wonder.
It certainly wouldn't help though, would it? I mean, like you say, it's admirable, stand by your teammates. There's no question of that. But when you sit there and start digging yourself in a hole, it's like, just take the punch and move on.
Yeah, and well, he didn't. But there's another.
And you don't see, the other thing is, you don't see Dennis getting pulled up for that a lot. And I know I've defended it in terms of, yes, he does have that level of ignorance, and maybe that's what it was. People just looked at him and went, not only is he young and green beyond the ears, but he maybe has a distorted view of life a little bit.
Yeah.
Go fast forward to like the end of Dennis's career at the Bulls, and everyone's like, yeah, Dennis definitely has a distorted view on life.
Yeah.
But at that time, that wasn't Dennis. You look at Dennis in the Pistons, he's not Dennis that everyone knows nowadays. He was.
No. Well, in those days, John Sally was the crazy one.
Oh yeah.
He was the Dennis Rodman.
Yes.
Now, that you saw in the Bulls.
Yep.
He was
the
Dennis
loud
Rodman
personality.
like you said, he came from a very difficult upbringing. So when he went into the Pistons, he had this family unit around him.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what he needed. He had that father figure of Chuck Daly around him. That's what he needed.
Yeah.
And when he went off the rails is when the Piston teams broke up. That's when he just went, "Pooh, let's," he turned into John Sally.
Yeah. And then went to the Spurs.
So yeah, I mean, there's also, and I always feel really sorry for Isaiah, because there's an interview he does courtside, and I don't know if he was talking about the game, but again, when the camera finishes, when the camera's not rolling, you know what I mean, they're not supposed to be talking. The camera stays on, goes on Isaiah, and he's literally got headphones off, head in his hands, just like, man, what is going on? Isaiah did want to be liked, and now he's hated. He's hated. Like, let's not forget, a lot of people hated these guys.
Yeah, I can't feel too sad for him. I can't feel too sad for him.
Oh,
At that point, yes, I could feel sad for him. But now, after understanding what happens in the future, and yeah, I think he just dug himself a lot of holes. That was the problem.
Yeah, well, he definitely dug himself further in a hole in that incident. But this is where I think the bad boys get created.
Yeah.
So this is where they're like, everyone hates us. Everyone hates us. Now, in those days, I mean, you probably know more about this than me, but you've got the Oakland Raiders.
Yep.
And they're a very physical team.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm sure someone started taking like a skull and crossbones or something like that and a logo and it started making money. We're bad boys.
Yes.
And then I think Detroit picked up on that as a marketing thing and just exploded.
And this is the 87, 88 season, isn't it?
We're now going into the where were we?
We were on 87 to 88.
So
now we're going 88 to 89 now.
This is now 88 to 89.
Yep.
Yeah. So again, they've just been defeated by the Celtics. Pistons have got a point to prove.
I mean, if you look just historically, just at that point, before we go into that, the Lakers won 5 of the championships in the 80s. The Celtics won 3. And when you're looking at that as an East versus West, Detroit were the factor that made the East the stronger in the 80s. And then because you have Chicago coming through towards the end of the 80s. But really, you had Boston, Detroit, and the Lakers. You didn't really have much else on the West. Wasn't really a lot going on. Bit of Portland. Clyde made a little effort, but
I'm trying to think. You put me on the spot. I can't think.
No,
now,
I'm just saying, like, because the Lakers,
know.
It was Showtime Lakers. So Showtime Lakers was early 80s all the way through.
They were in the finals a lot, yeah.
and obviously then the Celtics, and it was always
I think
Lakers and
Portland
Celtics.
coming in the 90s was probably the first time they didn't get in a long time.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back
But
and have a look.
When you look at it, it's relevant to now because obviously we're going back to East versus West in the All-Star game. But at that point, having the East versus West, that was one of the few times where it wasn't. There was two very obvious teams, and Detroit came and kind of ruffled that up because it wasn't just Celtics versus Lakers. It was, it's Celtics and Detroit and the Lakers.
Well, again, you had these two, like I said, juggernauts, the Celtics and Lakers going at each other, and that saved the league.
Yeah.
That's when the TV viewing started shooting up. Jordan, everyone loves him. He's shooting up. He's the rising star. Again, you just got this team in Detroit that, no one likes.
No.
And then this happens. So, right. So they then started the 88-89 season. So that's where we are now. They get a 54 victories, which is a franchise first division title in 32 years. In the postseason, the Pistons were taking on the Celtics for a third time in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, I'm going to go back and forth here.
Do it.
A bit like they do in The Last Dance. So...
Oh, yeah, this is exactly like The Last Dance.
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
the
yeah.
same.
So, in 1987, we now got Detroit in the conference finals against the Celtics.
Yep.
They've already knocked the balls out. So, Detroit have knocked the balls out.
Yep.
So, this is what you see in The Last Dance.
And it's worth remembering, Jordan was on the Bulls from like 84. If you haven't watched The Last Dance, it's not a spoiler, but he was in the Bulls from 84. So
yeah,
it's as he's coming.
He's the Bulls are becoming a contender.
Yes.
So,
and he was on fire still, but
Detroit beat him in 5 games.
Yep.
And that's the one that Pippen was a rookie that season. And
was that his rookie year?
Yeah, and it's the one in The Last Dance where MJ says, I wasn't physically prepared to take on that kind of a beating. He says something like that.
Yeah.
And then Detroit beat them, and he then goes straight to the gym. And it's one of the amazing parts of The Last Dance, which I loved, where the trainer goes up to Jordan and says, let me know where you want to go back to the gym and I'll be there. Thinking he's going to take a couple of weeks off, 4 weeks off, 5 weeks off. And he's like, see you tomorrow. And then he's working out in the gym. So he's now preparing his body. He's preparing his body to take a punishment that he knows he's going to be getting from the Pistons.
Yep.
Okay, so they're now in the conference finals against the Celtics.
Yep.
And I think they beat them in... They finally got over the hump, and I think they do it in 6 games. I want to say 6 games. But this is a really important bit that I can't remember if it comes up in The Last Dance or not. But this is where, before the end of the game, the Celtics walk off the court.
Yeah.
This is fact. Now, I've heard Isaiah somewhere saying, that's just what you did in those days. I disagree with that. It isn't what you did in those days. You shook someone's hand and looked him in the face and said, well done. Good luck. But the Celtics did do it to the Detroit Pistons when they beat him in Game 6, before the game finished. And it was only... who's the big guy? Big guy for the Celtics. McHale. It was Kevin McHale who Isaiah says something and he turns around and Isaiah goes and grabs his hand and shakes his hand.
Yeah.
And
that's the clip, isn't it?
I think that's the go, oh yeah, they shook hands. No, not quite. Go and look at the full reel and...
they were all walking off and he was shouting out to him.
So I just think that's important to highlight. But the Detroit Pistons got over that hurdle of arguably the greatest team of all time. Arguably. By arguably, I'm saying like top 10, maybe.
Oh, no, of course the top 10, probably top 5. I wouldn't stretch that, but...
So, It's the first trip for the Pistons in 32 years. I know you've got some comments on previous previous titles, but they take on the Lakers, who are obviously led by Magic, but they've got other players like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the
James Worthy.
What was the top scorer of all time?
Yes.
Till recently. James Worthy, amazing player, played with Michael Jordan at college. So yeah, they are, Showtime Cooper. Always liked him.
Showtime Cooper. Is that what you're going to call him?
No, I said Showtime, but I thought this guy called Cooper. He was always good.
We're going to call him Showtime Cooper from now on.
And then who was the guy who had the goggles on?
Well, Kareem.
No. There's a white guy with like a mullety kind of hair.
Oh, yeah,
I think he's in the backcourt of the Lakers now.
Yes. No, I know who he is.
He's the classic clip of the Lakers Celtics when they're at the
that's what really annoying me now.
They're at the Forum and he's driving in from a layup, and I think it's Kevin McHale just takes him out. That's the guy I'm talking about.
Yeah, it'll come to me.
Look, this is a serious team. Now it's also worth noting that Isaiah and Magic were good mates at this point, and this is something that really bothers me. Okay, so Magic and Isaiah are good mates. What I don't get is game one. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Game one, everyone's high-fiving, hey, and all that, and Magic and Isaiah shake hands and like little kiss on the cheek. I'm like, man, this is the NBA title. I agree with Magic on this one. Like, I'm gonna kill you to win that title. Like, why are we being mates? And then in that game, I think where that realization kicks in for Isaiah when he drives into the hole and Magic sticks out a forearm, poof, straight in his face. And Isaiah's like, what the hell?
And Magic was way bigger than Isaiah.
Yeah, much bigger.
Not quite as big as Magic is nowadays, but he was a big, solid dude.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And this is what bothers me. So Magic does that forearm in his face.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so passionate. He really wants to win. That's what they say about Magic. Larry Bird gets taken out by Bill Laimbeer, punches Bill Laimbeer in the face. Oh, look at that passion. He's fighting back. That's what they say about Larry Bird.
Yep.
Detroit do it. They're a disgrace. They should be chucked out the league. I'm just calling it as I see it.
Yeah.
It's and that's why I like Detroit, because they were the underdog that went and did something that no one wanted them to do it.
And seeing as you like fast forwarding and stuff, imagine fast forwarding to nowadays. You see what all of them were playing, the physicality that they were playing. You put that in today's game. I'm not saying that they don't take bumps in today's game, but it was a different type of physicality.
Yeah, it was. And people talk about, I don't personally buy, they say, oh, they changed the rules for Jordan. Okay, I understand that point. However, could it be that they changed the rules because people could get seriously injured? I could punch you in the face and it's like, come on.
Well, if you watch The Last Dance, even Jordan talks about getting beaten up. Like when he's in the early career, he's like, people on the team, you got the big guys, but they're pushing you around, and they're like, you got to step up, you got to play physically, and you got to get into it. And then they're like, we're your teammates, we're going to beat you up. Imagine what the others would do. Then you got Zeke and everyone saying that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think Zeke famously said in one of the interviews, maybe like 2014 or that sort of, long enough past that, he definitely should know better. But he made a comment, something about every time someone got fouled, they used to run up to Stern's office and a new rule would come out. And you're like, what are you still not letting this go?
Yeah.
Like, enough time has passed now.
Yeah, look, I get it, the rules changed, and I 100% agree. Detroit, the bad boys, would have been a focus for highlighting reasons for change. However, I think they changed the rules of the league to save injury, to stop massive brawls on the court
Yeah.
rather than we just need Michael Jordan to win. I don't get that. I don't buy that.
I think it was like we were saying earlier about the type of physicality of the game, the level of athleticism that players like Dr. J and James Worthy and all the athleticism for someone who's say like 6'5", 6'8", and then they were big, powerful dudes, and they were coming in and dunking it. It's like the game has changed now. We need to maybe change this. And it's worth pointing out the 3-point line came into the NBA in 1979.
Yeah, Magic and Bird.
So Magic and Bird, their first year, that's when the 3-point line came in.
That's 22, 23 meters, isn't it? It's not. It's bigger now, isn't it?
Yeah. It's an extra foot and a bit further out now. But it was 22 and an inch, I think it was. But basically, you think of that game and all the stats. So when you see those scores back in those days, there was no 3-point line. They were hitting out. So when you then come in, the 3-point wasn't like it was nowadays, when anyone who's listening who's younger used to even Steph Curry jacking everything up, or that game didn't exist. Steve Kerr, coach, very famous for hitting a few quite big threes. How many did he hit a game? Not loads.
He wasn't a huge scorer. I think he scored his huge shots were, I don't think were 3-pointers. I think they're more jump shots. I could be wrong.
But he pulled up for a few.
Like
and he was
long jump shots.
Long jump shots, and then he'd step back and maybe try and hit 3. But the 3 was still, in those late 80s, early 90s, people were trying to understand, where do we fit it into a game? Now, I saw some stats on this recently, and the actual effectiveness of the 3-pointers is still around 33, 35% in the game nowadays, as it was back in, say, the 80s, 90s. The difference is the amount of shots going up. So they used to maybe put 5 or 10 shots up a game. Now they're putting up 30 shots or whatever, 40 shots. But they're just getting the same roughly percentage each time. And then you've got players like Steph, who are obviously much better, but most of them, they're on the same sort of path. So they did, at that time, it's worth remembering that game has changed. So they were adapting to physicality. They had adapted to a 3-point line. And then obviously, imagine the first season that the 3-point line comes in, you draft Larry Bird. Everyone would be looking at him like, are you taking the mick? Like, you've now created a score system where someone can get an extra point for taking a shot. And the guy who can do that shot, you've just drafted him. Yeah. And he will go down in history as one of the greatest 3-point shooters ever. Yeah. And you've got him. Yeah.
I like the one where he wins a 3-point competition. He shoots the last shot and just holds his hand up as he's walking off. That's a good one. Just talking about Larry, I think I'm just going back.
Yep.
When Detroit played Celtics and beat them.
Yep.
I think it was in that game when it was Larry Bird drives into the hole, Lane Beer's up, and he's like, I'm coming down, you're coming down with me, and he takes out Larry, and on the floor, Larry turns around and punches him in the face and just kicks off. And then when it goes back to Boston, I think it's in Boston, who was the huge guy, 00 for Celtics? Who was that?
Oh, blimey. Not Robert Parrish, is it?
Parrish, yeah. Lane Beer's in front of him under the basket, and he kind of is going for the ball and then just starts like punching Lane Beer in the face. And then someone goes up to Lane Beer, like one of the physios with smelling salts, and he wakes him up, and he's like, first thing Lane Beer says, did they chuck him out the game? So anyway, I forgot about that one. Anyway, I think it was that one.
Yeah, but I mean, look, that was the point where that highlights really how much they put themselves into it. They put their body on the line. They're like, we're going to win the game.
Yeah.
We're going to do what we need to do. And if it means causing chaos, so be it.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode. That is the end of this part. But do not worry, because coming soon is the second part of this episode, and it will be available soon.